Welcome to Lesson 8. Today, we'll cover double Atari and downward Atari. In this lesson, we are going to explain two different techniques for capturing stones. Back in our second lesson, we already learned about the concepts of Atari and capturing stones. You could say that capturing was the very first stone capturing technique we ever learned. However, when black plays an Atari, we also learned that white has the option to extend. Once white extends, those stones now have three liberties. Next, if black wants to capture white by taking away its liberties, white will simply continue to extend. And now, white has increased to 4 liberties. From this, we can conclude that once white extends, it becomes very difficult for black to capture those white stones. Since players take turns in WeiQi, capturing stones is actually quite a challenging task. Therefore, in this lesson, I will introduce you to two of the most fundamental capturing methods. Let's start with the first one. Alright, when a shape like this appears on the board and black plays an Atari right at this specific position, we refer to this move as a double Atari. Please notice that this single black stone is simultaneously putting 2 white stones in Atari. Next, if white tries to save this stone, black can simply capture the other stone. Conversely, if white saves this stone, black can capture that one instead. A double Atari, as the name suggests, means attacking white in 2 places at once, making it impossible for white to save both. This is the first basic capturing technique we are learning today. So, what is the key point to remember here? First of all, when we are looking for a double Atari shape on the board, we must carefully count the liberties of each stone. For example, if I add another white stone right here, black playing here was a double Atari before, but is it still a double Atari now? The answer is no. Because once white connects, this stone is no longer in Atari. It actually still has 2 liberties left. So playing at this position is no longer a double Atari. Therefore, we need to firmly grasp the key characteristics of a double Atari shape. Let me set up another shape. Alright, let's say I've set up this new shape here. Let's take a look which position would be the double Atari. Right now, it looks like there are 3 different places to play an Atari. Right? Black playing here is an Atari, playing here is an Atari, and playing here is also an Atari. So, we still need to follow the method I explained just a moment ago. We need to check exactly how many liberties each of these 4 white stones has. This white stone has 3 liberties. This white stone has 2 liberties. This white stone also has 2 liberties, and this white stone has 3 liberties. Therefore, we must specifically look for the white stones that only have 2 liberties left, and then find the Atari position that can simultaneously attack both sets of white stones. For instance, as we just counted, this stone has 3 liberties, and this one has 3. But these 2 stones in the middle only have 2 liberties each. So we should aim to put both of these stones in Atari at the same time. Okay, done, Attila. It is perfectly clear. This position right here is the double Atari, and white will definitely lose 1 stone to black. Of course, a double Atari isn't limited to just single stones. For example, if we set up 2 stones, and over here we can also extend the white stones. In this situation, black playing an Atari at this position is also a double Atari. Following the key points we discussed just a moment ago, we can analyze the board and see that these 2 white stones have 2 liberties, and these 3 white stones also have 2 liberties. Therefore, we play our Atari at this position. Please note, if we play an Atari over here, white can simply connect. Then the entire white group escapes. So your Atari must first and foremost be played on the cutting point and simultaneously attack the stones on both sides. This guarantees we capture 1 side. Alright, that covers the key points of double Atari. Next, we are going to learn about downward Atari. Downward Atari is a technique that takes advantage of the unique properties of the edge of the board. Let's look at this shape. Black plays an Atari from the upper side, pushing towards the edge. Now, if white tries to escape by moving downwards, in reality, even if black plays elsewhere now, white is already dead. However, to make it easier to understand, we will explain it like this. When black plays the Atari, because white is pushed onto the first line, there is simply no way left to escape. So, downward Atari utilizes this specific characteristic of the first line at the edge of the board, chasing the opponent's stones toward the edge, also known as the first line, forcing them to run downwards. Now, let's take a look at an incorrect way to play this. If you play the Atari from the first line on the edge, once white escapes, we can see that black has absolutely no way to capture white anymore. Therefore, we must firmly remember, if you want to capture the opponent's stones, you must always play the Atari from the upper position, pushing them toward the edge. For example, let's look at another shape. A shape like this. If black wants to capture these white stones, these 2 stones right here, just firmly remember our rule. You must play from the upper position. Between the 2 Atari directions, this one is considered the upper position, pushing them toward the first line and the edge. This is the key point. As white tries to run along the first line, because you cannot extend liberties on the first line, they will be easily captured by black. Actually, even if black doesn't play here, white is already dead. Similarly, if you choose the wrong direction for your Atari and play from the edge, allowing your opponent to escape toward a much wider area, then white will successfully run out, and black will fail to capture these white stones. Therefore, the key point of downward Atari is to always pay close attention to the direction. Play from top to bottom, chasing your opponent toward the edge or the first line. This makes it much easier to capture their stones. Alright, that concludes today's lesson.